Sony A7V is coming. Rumors have been spinning that the A7V is coming by the end of 2024, but so far we haven't had any real specs. And so, as someone who's very familiar with Sony's lineup, having used most of them full-time in the past, I wanted to brainstorm what the A7V could be, who it'll be for, and maybe who it will not be for. Let's do it. Different camera manufacturers put their most concentrated focus from R&D dollars to marketing at different tiers of the camera world. For Sony, even though the A7 series of cameras isn't their flagship level product or even really close to it, the A7 series is clearly Sony's most important line. These are the cameras that Sony has to get right. Thanks in large part to how industry changing the A7 III was in the late teens, for the first time migrating professionals en masse over to mirrorless. A few years back, Sony followed up on that with the excellent A7 IV, a camera that, while it may be getting a little long in the tooth these days, is still completely current and relevant in today's landscape. So as the old adage goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and indeed, the A7 III wasn't broke either, and so the A7 IV was simply evolutionary on the same design. Resolution bumped a little bit, networking got a little bit better, it now shoots 10-bit video, etc. So what then would be an evolution of the A7 IV? Because that's what I think the A7V will be. And to discover that, we're going to go over 10 things that are both already existing, so we shouldn't mess with those. And then the counterpoint to each of those features is the hopefuls for the A7V. This is indeed what I think the A7V might be. Let's jump in. And here's the first thing the A7 IV already gets right, and that's the resolution. 33 megapixels is such a sweet spot for full-frame sensors. Speaking from the stills side, I would never tell you that you can't see more resolution than 33 megapixel because you absolutely can. See that very high resolution sensors render greater detail, but 33 megapixel is plenty enough for commercial work of any kind, unless a very specific project where something needs to be more, for instance, like framing for copy on a giant print ad. And even then, aside from 33 megapixel being enough resolution, we need to keep in mind which camera this is for Sony. This is not their high resolution body. This is their all-in-wonder camera. So let's leave 33 megapixel right where it's at. But here's number two. That 33 megapixel sensor has to get faster. And I'm not talking about frame rates, I'm talking about the read speed of the sensor. If we were to throw real shade at any one thing about the A7 IV, it's that it has a very slow rolling shutter sensor. This limits the freezing of fast motion, it puts a low ceiling on flash sync speed, and it limits video frame rates. The A7 IV really is pretty bad at this, and like I said, perhaps the only real criticism you can throw at that camera. So the 33 megapixel sensor needs to be faster, and it probably will be. It'll probably be stacked. Number three, and we're going back to what the A7 IV does right, and therefore the A7 V should continue to do. The A1 was the first Sony body to get this right, and then the A7 IV shortly thereafter followed suit, and that's the wireless capabilities are stable. And I know that sounds to some like perhaps a silly thing to focus on, but for my workflow, shooting interiors with strobes, while wirelessly tethering, it's pretty big. So let's flip this one and talk about number four, what the A7 V needs to have, and that's an even stronger Wi-Fi radio. Now look, you can get by with the A7 IV, but the Alpha 1, you can literally go down the street and it's still communicating. I'm not even joking. I actually discovered this by accident when I had to go out and move my van to a different spot because I was blocking somebody, and the A1 was still communicating with my iPad from way down the street, and that was rad. That means I can go run a strobe anywhere, right? Wherever I need to put light in the shot, I can do that, and I know that it's going to still continue to communicate. The A7 IV has app control, and it works almost great. So number six, the A7 V really needs a better app. If you've never used Red's control app for the DSMC3 family cameras, you may not understand how brilliant it is compared to anything else on the market, but it's no joke. And it should be the model for all other manufacturers with their apps going forward. The A7V will be a hybrid camera, so number 7. I hope you understand what I'm doing here with the counting up of numbers and point counterpoint thing. The A7 IV has awesome dynamic range in video. Undoubtedly, a lot of this is because it's downsampling 4K from a higher resolution read and thereby also descaling noise, right? But here we are at number 8. I know that was a quick one. And the A7V really should unlock more of that resolution. So instead of downsampling the, 7K sensor or whatever of 33 megapixel to a 4K file, like the A7 IV does, how about a 7K read to a 6K file? And since the sensor will also be faster, remember our point number 2, it'll be faster, we can do high frame rate 6K as well. Nothing crazy, just 6K 60. Number 9, the A7 IV has great ergonomics. Sony cameras continue to feel better with every generation in the grip, with the screen, heat management, etc. And the A7 IV is solid, but, and this is number 10, there is a noticeable difference in the feel between the A7 IV and Sony's more upmarket cameras like the Alpha 1, which by comparison is a brick. Now, strangely, because I've had all these cameras, many of them at the same time as each other over the years, Sony decided with the A7R5 to use the A7 IV body as a base instead of the A1/A9 body, whereas the A7R4 and R3 had the better, heavier body. That's backwards. So for number 10, I'd like to see Sony reverse that direction with the A7 V and give it a more robust, better feeling body than the A7 IV. Give us the A9 III or the A1 body to build it on. We know it'll have the Gumby screen because that's just what Sony does with newer things. And hopefully it'll have the dual CFX-A cards this time as well, but just make it feel better for us. So I hope you enjoyed this list. I did have this scripted and I'd been reading off of a script, but I wanted to go off script a little bit right here to say this list is my list. It's my list of things that are important to me. And some absent things that you'll notice on this list are anything about image quality, anything about color science, anything about frames per second, anything about autofocus. And it's not that those things aren't important to me. I think that those things are the things that every camera company right now is doing right. And so when it comes down to new cameras hitting the market and earning my dollars to go out and buy these things when I already have plenty of tools that are working great for me, it really comes down to these different things. You know, what is it like to use the camera? How stable is everything, right? What is the maximum flash sync speed? What is the Wi-Fi radio? Like, I already know it's going to make great images, right? But these things are what's important to me. So let me know what's important to you down in the comments. Let me know if you're excited for the A7 V. I don't have any Sony cameras right now. I have a few Sony lenses, strangely, but I don't have any Sony cameras. I went mostly over to Canon about a year or two ago. I am not brand loyal at all. I am completely brand agnostic, so if Sony builds a better mousetrap, I have no problem going back to Sony. Looking forward to the A7 V. I think it's going to be fantastic. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you soon. Peace.